Hello and welcome everyone to the world-famous Adventurers Club of Los Angeles. My name is Andrew Medina. I am member number 1212, and I'm so glad to be your host for the evening. We got another great program coming at you tonight. I'm joined by the one and only Sid Suarez to talk about his adventures from here to Timbuktu. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Sid, welcome back to the Adventurers Club.
Happy to be here, happy to share what I learned, and a recent trip. The trip was just a few months ago, so over Christmas, December holidays, went to Timbuktu, and that's when they had the Tuareg Music Festival. So I'll talk a little bit about Mali, about Bamako, but really the crux is the music festival and everything in Timbuktu.
And this is not, like germane to what you're going to be talking about, but I do feel like December is the ideal time of year to be in a place like Timbuktu, would you say?
It is absolutely. 7 months of the year, it's over 100 degrees in Timbuktu. God. So you definitely want to go in December, and that's when they have the music festival. It kind of varies. It moves a little bit. I think it was November, December, each year.
Yeah, all right. That's a little roasty toasty. So Sid, what is your background? How did you get into adventure, and what sort of brought you to this point?
Well, it's interesting. So I traveled for a living for the last 30 years as a systems consultant, implementing software systems. And in that job and in that role, I actually started going to some pretty unique places. So I worked in Venezuela for 3 months, in Taiwan, I got to China, to the Middle East as well, and probably the one that took me over the top was I worked in Russia, in Moscow. And once I had that was it. It sort of layered onto there. Mm-hmm. And then by chance, after I'd been traveling those places, I had a friend say, "Hey, Sid, do you want to go on the Trans-Siberian?" And I said, absolutely. A longtime friend that I've known for a while. And a 30-day trip, my first real big adventure, and it ended up to be my favorite one to this day. 30 days in the Trans-Siberian across Russia was just fabulous. And it just happened on the last day I was there at breakfast. I met the world's most traveled man, Bill Altaffer, right here.
Hey.
And we met at breakfast and we exchanged cards. I go, wow, that's really neat that I met another American. I hadn't seen another American for 30 days. And then when I came back to San Diego, it ended up that I bumped into Bill at a Starbucks, about a year later. And we chatted. I said, "Bill, what are you doing here?" And we chatted, and I said, "The next trip you go on, I'm going with you," because I knew his background, and that was how long ago? It was 12 years ago. So since then I've been doing about 3 trips a year all over the place, and Bill's certainly my mentor and a great leader.
What was the trip you went on with him? What was like the
We
next
went
one?
to Romania. Actually, that was our first trip. We went to Romania and saw Vlad the Impaler and all the implements and toured the whole country, and it was pretty fabulous. But we've done others.
Program.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So but this trip in particular, I owe to Matt Allison. Matt Allison was the one that, I think it's 1240 is his number, if I get that right. He was the one that actually put this together. He said, "Hey, Sid, you interested in going to Timbuktu?" And I go, "Let me think about it." "Okay, I'm in." It was pretty much that quick. And he gets all the credit for me going there and having this experience.
Very nice. And so this was, like you said, just a couple years ago in December.
No, it's just a couple months ago.
Sorry, it's just a couple months ago. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so before we get into that, I just do want to talk about the sort of elephants on the stage here. So what do we have? What are we looking at up here?
Yeah, what we have there, and it's very interesting. So initially, Mali was part of ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States. There are 15 of them. They decided to leave that because some of the countries that they're associated with weren't getting the benefits of a 15-state economic consortium. So they left that, and they also had military coups. So Mali had 2 military coups in the 2020s, so recently, and they decided to join their own union with Niger and Burkina Faso. So this right here shows the flags and colors of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger in this depiction of, now they call it AES.
And this is like the shape of that state, right?
Yeah,
this
that's
silver one in the
It's
middle.
3 countries, but it's the alliance of Sahel, if I pronounce that right, states, AES. And that's what that depicts. And the interesting thing about this, and my guide sent this to me, he said, Sid, hey, do you want this? I was immediately interested in this. If you see in the center, there's a key.
The gold.
Yeah,
one
gold
here, right?
key. Well, that gold key is actually a passport. So Timbuktu is on the trans-Saharan trade routes where they trade salt, they trade gold, and they trade, way back in the days, other things as well. And that is for the tribes to go through the desert to show that they're a member of a tribe and they are allowed to pass through there. So it's literally a passport. And I asked my guide, I said, do they still use this? He said, yeah, they still use this. So it's actually used today. It wouldn't work for us, but it works for the local people in Niger and Burkina Faso and those that want to make their way to Marrakesh on camels, I guess. So that's that.
And this is a flag you grabbed from the festival, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That was in the Timbuktu Music Festival, which they call the Vivere Ensemble, Music Ensemble. They have a different name for it, but it was they were throwing Mali flags out, and at the start of the festival, they had a bunch of patriotic things with the big flags, and some of the singers, they were throwing these flags out, and I made my way to the front and grabbed one, and they grabbed it, and they said, no, let him have it, because, obviously I wasn't a local, so they gave it to me, and I'm really proud to have it, and I have it in my home office and, displayed on the wall, so that was really neat to bring back with me. And the last thing here is, I really love this. I picked this up from a local artisan in Timbuktu as we were going through the sand-covered streets. And it just spoke to me. And the salt trade, where we've heard about for decades, hundreds of years, they have the camels with the salt pieces going through the desert. That actually still exists today, and that's apparently the most economical way to move blocks of salt through the desert. And this depicts that.
And we actually have a picture of one of those salt bricks, isn't that right? Can we pull that up, Phoebe?
Yeah. So one of the things when we
so that's just like a rock of salt.
I said, to my guy, I actually said, can I get a piece of this salt? And they actually brought me 3, and it weighed like 20 pounds. And I go, I can't bring this back. It's just too much. And what's the TSA going to think when I bring this big chunk of salt? But actually, if I go next year, and I'll tell you how to go, I'm going to try to bring one back and see if I pass customs.
Look, there's a few places on the wall that are still open that are just block of salt shaped.
I definitely love to add to that. So.
Fantastic. So you heard about this trip through your friend Matthew Allison.
Yep.
But your trip that you went on was a little bit different than what everyone else did. So what was the trip you went on, and what was the trip everyone else did?
Well, what happened is I came with about Matt and 6 other people, and it was great. And I was super happy to be with Matt there in the trip. And what happened is we got in at 2 a.m. in Bamako, and Bamako was jamming. There were hundreds of people in the street. There was music. I'm going, wow, check this place out. It's a town of 4 million people, so it's larger than San Diego. It's a big town. And by the hotel we were staying at, people were in the street, music was going on. The 2 people that I didn't travel with, they lost their luggage. One was from Australia, one was from India. And they got to the hotel, they had no luggage, nothing. They said, well, let's go. One of the gals said, do you want to get a drink? Let's go grab a beer. It's 2 a.m. We took 4 flights to get there. And she said, well, we started talking about the trip in Timbuktu. I said, are you going to Timbuktu? I didn't know her from Adam. She says, yeah. And it ends up that she was going on a 2-day trip to Timbuktu. And our group was going on a 3-hour tour to Timbuktu. Fly in, fly out because of the danger, and let's get in, get out, and make sure everything's safe. So in the morning, I talked to our guide and I said, can I go on the 2-day tour, the full music festival tour, instead of the 3-hour, stop and go tour? And he had a spot, and the rest is history. I went to the full tour and went to the full music festival, which is perfect for me because, and these are the people I went with. Actually, I went with a Polish doctor right there on the right, a Polish judge, a professor from a university in the UK, and a teacher in the UK. And I didn't know them from Adam. I actually left our group and joined their group because, I found out I can go on a 2-day tour. And, I love Matt and the crew he went with, but, I got the chance to go to the 2-day tour. So I did that, and it was incredible from there.
And why was that sort of significant to you? Like, what was it? Like, you really wanted to go to this music festival. Why is that?
Absolutely, because for me, music is really is a big part of my life. I've been going to concerts in the 70s. I love music. Anytime I can be in a situation where there's music plus an African culture, an African tribal culture, plus an Islamic culture where they allow music. So there's not many, there's some Islamic cultures where they allow music, there's some where they don't at all, like in Iran and things like that. But Morocco, Mali, they love music. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. It's exotic, it's, you get the culture, you get the African culture, and you have the music. So it's absolutely the best combination for me personally.
Sure.
And I would do it again,
So talk us about getting into Timbuktu and actually getting to the music festival.
Yeah, so
what does that look like?
So it was a challenge.
It's 4 flights.
Yeah, well, it's 4 flights to get to Bamako from San Diego, but it's an extra flight, a 5th flight to get to actually Timbuktu. And they have Air Mali is the airline, and what they did is they acquired some Ukrainian 737s, first generation. So like the first dash on the 737s are like 30 years old. And they have like 2 Ukrainian 737s on Air Mali. And the flights are a little irregular, so you get to the airport, they may leave 2 or 3 hours past the time, but the flight was actually incredible. Because there's only 2 flights a week, so if you miss the flight, you're not going to Timbuktu. And so we were there, but because of the music festival, anyone was on this flight. So the ministers, all the dignitaries, the military people, and the performers. So it ends up that I'm sitting here in a middle seat, if you can imagine me in a middle seat in a first-gen 737, and the guy next to me, and I didn't know who he was, and we flew the whole flight. He was Bombino, one of the 200 greatest guitarists of all time, according to Rolling Stone, and he was the headliner in the music festival. And then all the other performers were there. I didn't know who they were at the time, but they were also on the plane, and some maybe generals or colonels, in the military were in the front, and some other VIPs who I didn't know who they were. But it was extremely exciting to be on this, twice a week flight to Timbuktu from Bamako, and that actually took only like 1 hour. It's a 1-hour flight.
But I think there's a little bit to unpack there because, like you said, everyone is on this plane, whether they be artists, whether they be sort of dignitaries, like military officials. Yeah. So, like, do you want to play the video of what was his name?
Bombino.
Bombino. Do you want to play the video now, or do you want to wait?
I think probably the one of the calabash. The calabash thing,
sure, all right.
That one would be good because it gives you the feel of the actual experience. And this is the first thing that we saw when we arrived after we, to the music festival, and these locals drumming on these calabash, these giant gourds, and it just gives you a feel for the event. And it's before the actual music festival. It's outside in tents, and maybe that would be good to.
All right, let's roll that.
So anyway, that's before the festival, and getting everyone warmed up, getting the vibe going, and it was what you can see around it is this giant VIP tent where the ministers were going in, some of the soldiers, some of the generals, and we were in the VIP tent drinking the local tea and mixing with everyone there, and it was really a great way to start the event. That's basically the beginning of the music festival.
I want to draw attention to that because I think that's really interesting. Like you said, you were right there with like the top generals, top government officials, like in the same tent. So can we roll that, Phoebe, and just get a sense of how close to these people you actually were?
Yeah, this is.
This is pretty nuts.
Yeah. So one of the rules is you can't film any military. You cannot, and I learned that lesson the hard way in Cameroon, photoing the U.S. Embassy. I got pulled over for that, and that was not a good thing. So I've made sure not to photo any military at all and the trip. But it was amazing. If you could see, if that video can come up.
There's military right there.
Yeah, you can see some of the soldiers there, and we're actually in the back of the tent with maybe colonels and generals and ministers and drinking tea. But you can see the type of people that were there, and this is the only clip that I have of the military because at the entryway, I think one of the people I went on the trip took this, and I decided to show this, but. It was amazing how much security was at this event, and probably the only time I would go to Timbuktu is with this security. So for the festival, there was roughly 300 soldiers guarding the grounds that we were in. I mean, full-on soldiers with AK-47s. It literally was the safest I've ever been in my life. I mean, it was almost unbelievable. And one thing, you'll see a picture later of the crowd, but we were in a VIP grandstand, and there were 5 rows of that grandstand, just 5, your typical little grandstand overlooking, the festival ground. And I think I have a picture of that. There were soldiers facing, it was us, the ministers, and I think 5 of us and some other VIPs. They were facing outward. The soldiers were facing outward. And then down below the grandstand, there was a ring of soldiers surrounding that. And then there was another ring around the ensemble. So it was really unbelievable. And they had 250 caliber truck mounted guns at the gate. So if you ever want to go to Timbuktu, go during the music festival. I mean, there, obviously, this is the first time it actually happened in like 13 years, because al-Qaeda's been attacking since like 2008, and then they really ransacked Timbuktu in 2012 and destroyed some of the mausoleums, some of the great mosques that you're going to see, and some of the pictures I'm going to show. and then they also attacked the library. So it's still a dangerous place, and the only way to really go safely is, from my guide, is to go via air or charter. So you have to go via Sky Mali or a charter to get in and out, because going over the roads is not safe, because you don't know if you're going to run into al-Qaeda kidnapping or worse. So that's what I can tell you about that. But we were completely safe at the actual festival, and the festival was fabulous. And like I said, there was about 300 soldiers protecting maybe, 2,000 attendees, I'm guessing, that were there.
And you felt safe?
Completely safe. And I also felt very safe in Bamako. And that brings up an interesting point, because Tuesday this week, the State Department said they issued a level 4 advisory for Mali and said, do not travel. This is one of 21 countries you're not supposed to go to. And I felt completely safe in Bamako as well as Timbuktu during the festival. So it's interesting that they say that. And because I went there, and this is one thing Bill and I talk about, you're going to get an SSSS on your ticket, which means extra security screening. So, if you go to these places that they don't want you to go to, Delta and all the other airlines, you're going to get that SSSS on the thing. So I always get the extra pat down, they go through your luggage, they take off your shoes, they wand you, they do that. So be prepared for that if you go to some of the places. So that's the downside.
Sure. And so the soldiers that were there, they were there to protect you. I feel like you maybe touched on it, but like from al-Qaeda, or from what exactly?
Well, they were there to protect the entire crowd, because the entire crowd, but there are all the ministers, all the generals and soldiers, so all the VIPs of Mali were there.
But from what, I guess?
Well, al-Qaeda.
Sure.
Well, so what al-Qaeda has been attacking from the north, and what's happened in 2022, the French were kicked out of Mali. So the French were there for 100 years, and 2022 they kicked them out, and they had a junta, and it's a military government, and now they're having Russian forces kind of fight al-Qaeda and the rebels in the north. So there's the Russian Wagner forces that are there, but the French aren't there anymore. So it's either Wagner or it's the Malian soldiers. And the people were there were Malian soldiers, but they were also, looked like militia. They weren't all the regular soldiers like the guy you saw in the picture. There were others. Some of them looked like kids, frankly, but they were 3 rings of soldiers with AKs, and we were completely safe. The crowd was safe. The crowd was great, and that's what I can say about that.
Sure. So so I want to talk a little bit about the music now. Like, we kind of heard a little bit at the before the festival, but if you had to sort of compare the overall sort of musical vibe to, I guess, a more like established or more familiar genre of music, what would you compare it to?
Well, it's not like the concerts we have here at all. It's modern African music, and there's a lot of great guitar players. There's a lot of great African female singers that were there, and they also have unique instruments. They play these guitar-like instruments that are calabash, that are made out of gourds and things, but you can play them like an electric guitar, but it's not the instruments that we have. So it's traditional music. It's fabulous. It's just not like our music festivals at all, which is actually quite good. It's very, very different. So I actually liked it even more because it was completely African and traditional, and their traditional instruments and the traditional singing, but it also had the incredible guitar playing that I love that we get out here. And so one of the things that was really nice is the time of the festival. So the music, like if you grew up in the 70s, our concerts used to start at 9 o'clock and go to midnight or 1. Well, the concert there started at like 9:30, and went till 1 in the morning. It brought me back to the 70s, which, if you know concerts now, they start early and end early. They're out by 10:30 here. In the States, certainly out in San Diego, a lot of the shows I go to, but it was great. It was like, wow, it starts at 9:30 and it goes till 1. So it was exciting that, that I experienced that again, and it was in its raw form. So
I want to touch on what you said. There's a number of great female singers, and we actually have a video of one of those amazing female singers. So
I have one that,
can you play that for me?
And I didn't put the singer in the. I have a singer in Bamako that I really liked, and let's play that singer at this club called Los Angeles. That one. Yep.
Yeah. So he goes to Timbuktu, and he ends up in a place called Los Angeles.
Yeah. There's actually. So this singer, I really love this singer, and I was so happy. This was on our trip after the music festival. We went back to Bamako, and said, "What do you want to go do? Let's go listen to some music." We went to this local club, and there's 2 singers, and I just put the one clip from this one singer. There's another one that was even better than her, and she was just singing, wailing in this local Malian language. I don't know if it was Bambara. They have 13 different languages in Mali, and the most prevalent one is Bambara. So maybe she was singing in that, I'm not sure. But I loved her voice. And then when I was there, and this is this little club, maybe, from here to that,
to the polar bear?
Yeah, to the polar bear. It's pretty small. And then who's in the corner is Habib Kote, which is one of the most famous African singers. And he gets up there and sings a song, Santa Barbara. And I'm in a bar in Bamako, and I meet one of the most...
Los Angeles.
Yeah, called Los Angeles, and I get a picture with, Habib Kote. So I've been listening to his music on YouTube as I'm driving up from San Diego to LA, and it's a small world. So I want to let you know that music, it's kind of like the best of all the cultures. You get the African culture, the Islamic culture, and the music too. So it was like the perfect experience for me.
Sure. And then going back to what you were saying about like the guitar players, you have a video of Bombino.
Yeah. Let's
can we roll that?
Yeah, let's take a look at Bombino, because one of the 200 greatest guitarists. I had 3 clips from him, and I think this one is a pretty good one. I think you'll like it. It's let's take it away on that.
Sizable. Like, how many people are in this crowd right here?
I think there's probably, I'm guessing 1,000, 1,500. It could have been more. I'm thinking 1,500, but
okay.
That's about it.
And what's like the vibe?
Everyone was happy. So, the people were so happy to be there, and there was actually a gate outside, and people were pushing to get in, all the locals. This is the only time this happens, once a year, and it hasn't happened for 12 years or 13 years. And being in the crowd, everyone was elated. It was actually, because of the 5 of us that were there, everyone wanted to take a selfie with us. So we had literally probably 50, 60, 70 selfies with people in the crowd. Everyone was just happy we were there. We were happy to meet them. It was that. I think we have a couple pictures that show the crowd, but it was pretty joyous, and I felt very warm with the people. Maybe there's a few more thousand. I don't know. Up to it looks like at least 2,000.
Are there like different stages, or are there different?
No,
like,
there's one stage. You can see. I'm in this picture, but literally everyone wanted to take a group selfie with us, and you can see this one's Magda. She's a doctor from Poland, and you could look at the look on their faces. They're happy to be there. It's a great experience. The music is top notch, so you can't beat it, and pretty joyous crowd. Lots of security.
For sure. And so, outside the music festival, you're in this incredible sort of culturally significant place. So, like, what are some of the other things that are in Timbuktu that you can do?
Well, Timbuktu is an incredible historical place. I mean, it was basically founded by Mansa Musa, who was at the point in time was the richest man in the world. Okay, his net worth was worth $400 billion at the time, and he had 18 tons of gold. Okay, and today's net worth, that's worth $2 trillion. I calculated it, and you can see this. I really like this picture. It shows Mansa Musa on his 2-year journey to Mecca, to the Hajj. And he went a two-year journey, and he ended up in Cairo with 12,000 slaves. Each slave had 4 pounds of gold. Each camel had 50 to 300 pounds of gold dust. And the story goes, he gave away most of the wealth or most of the gold on the way. He just was giving away gold, and so much that he crashed the gold market in Egypt. And then story goes, they had to borrow from the merchants at high rates to finish the trip. So, and he had his son take over for him when he left on this Hajj, and was in charge of Mali and everything back in Bamako, running the rest of the. They say, how did he get wealthy? Well, apparently taxes on the salt and the gold. Apparently the taxes on the salt is, how this, and it was the wealthiest country in Africa at the time. And the Malian Empire went for 300 years, I think it was 12 something to almost 1600. But the zenith of it was in the 14th century when Mansa Musa was in charge for 25 years. And so that's the lead in. And what did he do? He funded the building of 2 of the 3 mosques that I got a chance to go to. The Sankari Madrasa, which is the world's oldest university, and we have some pictures there. Is
this it?
No, that's there it is, the Sankari Madrasa. And this is they call it a university. Really, it was one-on-one study. You'd have one sheikh teaching one student, and they would teach for up to 10 years, this one student. And they had 3 degrees. The first degree was to memorize the Quran and to learn Arabic. The second degree was astronomy, mathematics, and other subjects. And then the third is a superior degree to be of a really strong character. So that's the Sankori Madrasa.
So that building does not look very large. Obviously, it's just for one-on-one study.
No,
it looks like it's smaller than, certainly smaller than this room, but like
the minaret is really beautiful.
I see.
And with the wood dowels coming out of the minaret, I mean, my feeling is I can't actually believe I'm in this place.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. I mean, I've seen these pictures for I don't know how long, how many decades. You always hear about this, but being there was incredible. Now, we didn't go into the Sankori Madrasa, which was the world's first university. The second one I'm showing is the Dignitaries Mosque, and that's the most famous one. It's the UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's you can see the wooden dowels. Every year, it took 400 kilos of gold to build that. Mansa Musa funded it. And there's a picture, this is my favorite picture of it, at the top of the mosque. We got a personal tour of this mosque. Literally, we're the only people in here. You got to think about this. This has been around since 1327.
Yeah.
Okay? And we're the only people there. It had 108 columns and 3 great rooms.
Feels like it's being in like the Sistine Chapel by yourself almost.
It was, I couldn't believe it. It was just, you can't even believe they're there. And they took us private tour of the mosque with soldiers guarding us.
Yeah.
It was safe, and it was incredible. I would recommend anybody to have this experience.
So, yeah, sorry. So what is this?
This is really important. This is the Ahmed Baba Institute. It's the fearless librarians of Timbuktu. So when al-Qaeda attacked Timbuktu, they destroyed 5,000 manuscripts. Okay, 5 out of 30. And what they have is they have one librarian and some staff, and they are literally, this is CISA, they are going page by page, saving every document and manuscript for this almost 1,000-year history. I guess it's like 1100, 1200 when they had the first manuscripts created.
Wow.
And this is it. So, you hear Africa doesn't have any history, any written history. Well, that's BS. They do. And it's all the way back to, 800 years
Now,
ago.
this group stayed during like all the al-Qaeda attacks throughout all of the,
Well, they're here, they're preserving it, and they're digitizing it. So there's some funding, there's some grants from some institutions, some large institutions that were funding it, and it sort of dried up. It looked like they needed some funding when I was there. But they have a few people, a handful of staff preserving this, and there's a picture of a vault where all of and I don't know if we have that picture there, but there's a vault where all of the subjects, there's the vault, the entryway to the vault, and it's very interesting because they have mathematics, they have astronomy, they have law, they have chemistry, they have all these different subjects. They're categorized on the wall there, and they have manuscripts for each of these areas. So they really did have this knowledge way back then. And what's happened because of al-Qaeda attack, there are all these giant manuscripts, and most of the people have kept it in their homes. Wow. So they're hidden, buried in the sand under these buildings, and not everyone wants to bring them back because al-Qaeda attacked and they're still attacking, right? I mean, right. So they think, why am I going to, bring it to this institute if it could get attacked again?
Right.
So,
right.
And
Sure.
It's a very slow process, page by page, keeping the volume. So these guys are heroes, and it's really incredible work they're doing in this institute. There's
a great picture of you with the Adventurers Club flag that I want to go back to for a second.
Well,
so where is that?
That's the Dignitaries Mosque. 4 syllables. I have a hard time pronouncing it, but this is the famous one, the super famous one. It's a World UNESCO Heritage Site, and I had to pull out our flag. I had to get that one, and so happy to be there. It's one of those. It's beyond a bucket list item. It's really like one of the great adventures you can have is to go to this place, and the combination of the place and seeing the city plus the music festival really puts it over the top for me.
Now, you've been a member of this place for a few years now.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And, you have the flag in this picture, obviously.
Yep.
And I know that feeling. You get to a place, you're just like, I got to bust it out.
Yep.
I got to bust it out. Like this place is right,
Yep. Right.
How has sort of your relationship with travel and adventure changed since you became a member here?
Well, I'm taking more and more adventurous trips. The trips I go on are very special. I've went with the world's most traveled man there to Ethiopia, and we went to the southern deserts in Ethiopia and visited the elephant tribes and the camel dancing ceremonies, and really it's taken it to the next level. So the trips I take now are pretty incredible. I just was on a canoe in the floating villages of Nigeria in Lagos, and so potentially a trip to Angola. But I'm sort of upping my game. You sort of level into it, and then you meet people like the members of this club, and they call you and say, hey, you want to do this, and that's where it goes. So you're sort of taking it to the next level.
And I feel like your sort of superpower in all of this is just your sort of ability to say yes to things. Someone reaches out, they're like, hey, you want to go on this trip? You're like, hell yeah, let's make it happen.
There's a lot to that. You have to be willing to go. You have to set the time to go.
Would you go to Somalia?
Would you go to Somalia?
Yeah, would I go to Somalia? I went with this man right here. We went to Somalia. We went to Mogadishu, Somalia.
Well, wow.
And it was before the lighthouse fell down. But we went there with you haven't gone to Somalia, Mogadishu, until you've been to the lighthouse. Well, we went there a year later, the lighthouse collapsed.
Oh, wow.
So I have pictures of that too. So yeah, that was one of the very best adventures ever. And now I went to this one, which is equally incredible.
Sure. And maybe that's another program for you, the trip to Mogadishu.
Yeah.
So you're there for 2 days, and then what's it like kind of getting out of Timbuktu?
Well, it's
Or back to Bamako.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Oh, actually, no. Before we do that, let's talk about this, because this is a cool story.
Yeah.
So, what is this
Yeah.
structure?
This is
what happened there?
The legend of Al Farouk. So this is the other really cool thing in Timbuktu. I mean, I love legends, and this is like the protector of the city on this winged horse. And he supposedly flew, this 500 years ago, flew around at night and protected the city from robbers and villains, and he's like a patron saint. And he's a big hero for these people. And al-Qaeda actually destroyed part of this monument in 2012, and they had to rebuild it when they attacked. But it's incredibly beautiful monument. And we also, you can see, I love this picture of, this is our group. When we went to see this monument, the mayor of the city came out to meet us, and the minister of tourism for Mali, not just for Timbuktu, for Mali, the minister of tourism, and I don't know, 3 or 4 other dignitaries they had with them, and they gave us a tour of this monument, and it ended up that we got on national TV. So we actually made Mali national news, and I think we have a clip here, and this is the first tourist to Timbuktu in, I don't know, 12 years, and they were promoting tourism because they want the tourists to come back and they want people to visit. And so, I don't know if we have the clip, but...
Du plaisir à visiter la ville des 333 saints, une visite qui leur permet d'assouvir leur curiosité à travers les monuments classés patrimoine mondial de l'humanité, bibliothèques et mosquées.
Ils sont vraiment très contents d'être là, et c'est une fierté pour eux de pouvoir venir à Tombouctou, qui est un site mystérieux, et avec la connaissance de l'agence qui a organisé le voyage. Donc ils sont vraiment très très contents de leur séjour à Tombouctou.
Nous pouvons dire aujourd'hui, sans se tromper, Tombouctou is back. Tombouctou est de retour, la Renaissance est de retour, et c'est le lieu de remercier, de féliciter les artistes et les touristes très courageux qui ont décidé de venir découvrir. Nous lançons un appel à l'ensemble des voyageurs, des hommes de culture, de tout le monde, du monde entier qui souhaiteraient visiter notre beau pays, que les portes du Mali sont grandement ouvertes.
Il faut dire qu'avant la crise de 2012, Tombouctou était une destination prisée par les touristes du monde entier. Gageons que cette timide reprise permettra de booster l'économie locale au grand bonheur des tours opérateurs.
Now, I think that's sort of an interesting little detail. You said that there are 13 languages in Mali.
Yeah.
French, I imagine, is not one of the native ones.
Yeah, the French were there from the 1800s, late 1800s, and when they took it over, so they've been there over 100 years, almost 100 years, or more than 100 years. So that's the spoken language. It's a francophone country, but their 13 native languages, Bambara is the most spoken language there.
Gotcha.
But yeah, everyone speaks French, and as you communicate with the rest of the world, I guess their ministers and national TV, they're still speaking French. So they're not speaking English, they're speaking French, and if they're not speaking French, they're speaking the local languages.
Gotcha. But it is interesting that they still do their news broadcasts in French.
In French, yeah. And so we made the national news, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
As the first tourists there, there's 5 of us in how many years?
Absolutely. No, like what an incredible trip. And you had told me that you're thinking about going back again this year.
Well, absolutely. There's some other things to see. So I just got my feet wet with Timbuktu, and Timbuktu is super cool, and I'd love to go back and learn more, spend more time in Bamako. But they have this annually, and according to my guide, there's another, I texted him this week when I was getting ready for this presentation. He said, yeah, are you coming in December? So apparently it's going to happen.
It's happening.
It's happening
It's
again.
on.
But there's 4 other cities that I haven't gone to: Mopti, Jena, Gao, and Segu. And they're equally as historic and have the incredible mosques, and they have so much to offer. So if I go back, I'll go to the music festival, and I'll also go to those cities. We'll take a charter, we'll figure out how to get there safely and go in and go out. But I've seen pictures, and recently a person that my guide took went there, and I've seen the photos, and it looks like an incredible experience. So I would go back to see those cities and the music festival, which is fabulous.
And tell us a little bit about your guide, because I feel like so much of this can be made or broken by having the right person guide you. So tell us about your guide, what he was like, and
Ali Dicko was a great guide. He grew up in Timbuktu, so you want to go with a guide that's a local, that knows the ins and outs, what to do, where to go. But he's also extremely trustworthy, and he speaks fluent English, and he speaks all the local languages, so he can get us in and out of things. But I highly recommend him. If anyone is interested in going, he's the guy to go with, because he actually got me on zero notice a plane seat to go to Timbuktu for 2 days and to stay at this hotel. There's the hotel we stayed at that was able to go to the festival. So
for anyone in the audience here tonight, or anyone on YouTube, if they wanted to go with you this year to the Tuareg Music Festival, are you open to that? Are you amenable to that?
Absolutely. I could connect them to Ali. You have to have visas. You have to have logistics. It takes 5 flights to get there, but you have to be prepared for an adventure. But absolutely, it is possible, and there are risks. But
that's all we need.
It is.
That's all we need here at the Adventurers Club.
It can be pulled off. And that's what I'll tell you. I pulled it off, and so did my people I traveled with.
For sure. All right, well, Sid, thank you so much. If it's all right with you, I'd love to open it up to questions from the audience. And so if you have a question for our speaker tonight, please raise your hand, and we'll get you a mic.
Thank you. That was fascinating. So if music is one of the great cultural connectors, the other one is probably food. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the awesome or unusual things you ate?
Well, yeah, sure. I hope you like mutton, because we had mutton and dumplings for lunch, and they, goats are part of the environment, and they have a lot of goat. So, so that was the unusual. In Timbuktu, we had that. I mean, in Bamako, they have regular restaurants, European restaurants and restaurants where you can get the local African food as well. But that was the one thing. Our guide made sure we had the local dishes, lots of couscous and millet and various meats. So that's what I'll tell you there.
I actually have 3 questions. I don't want to be too greedy, but one is I'm just curious if it was very expensive to do this. And also, I just wanted to ask you, what are those wooden dowels on the mosques? Because I've seen those in the UAE and wondering what those were.
Apparently, wood is really hard to get to, and they support the structure. So the structure of the minarets are made of limestone and mud, and the wood holds it up.
Yep.
So
it's structural.
Yeah, it's structural.
Okay.
Yeah,
And it also helps as like footholds. Isn't it true that they use as like footholds when they need to like put in more limestone and
potentially.
mud?
And every year those mosques are restored. So the whole town, no matter what your religion, you all come and you help restore the mosque.
Sure.
So that's it.
Okay. And outside of the airfare, was it very expensive to do that trip?
It wasn't. Actually, it was surprisingly inexpensive. So nobody knows about it yet. Don't tell anybody.
Okay. Hear that? No one telling
nobody.
anyone.
Don't
It'll be our
tell
little
anybody
secret.
that you can get there, but it was reasonable.
Okay.
It was
And last
reasonable.
question, if you could just like a quick thumbnail sketch, what are the politics of Mali? What's it like? What's the government like?
Well, it's a military junta, and it's a military-run government. As I said, the 3 countries are banding together. We didn't have too much interaction with the government or ministers, but they were happy that we were there.
Right.
And the military was very friendly to us. So it seemed I just read actually today that the president has a 5-year term. So the guy Assimi Goïta, who's led the junta, has now been granted a 5-year term. So it's a military dictatorship, but it's a friendly one. I don't know.
It's very repressive towards the local people, towards the population.
I didn't see that at all. No, the people everyone was in the streets. People were happy. There was bustling. Bamako is 4.5 million people. I didn't see any of that repression. I did see some checkpoints to get to our hotel. Various checkpoints to make sure you got the right papers and you're going the right place. But I didn't see any repression. That's invisible to me.
And to be fair, I do feel like you had quite a bit of interaction with the government between being seated next to them in that tent and then being on TV with them.
Actually, they were very, very open. I mean, it's much closer to this government than I've ever gotten to the U.S. government.
Like if you was to say, have you ever had a similar experience with anything like that here in the US?
No, never. Yeah. Not even local government.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's incredible. I loved it, and I'd go back.
3 questions. First one's kind of easy. The group that you ended up at this news event, was that the two-day tour?
Yeah, yep.
The guys kept on traveling.
Yep,
together?
the doctor from Poland, the judge from Poland, the professor and the teacher from the UK, and we're in touch. So, we talked about doing other trips and to go to Algeria, to go to Libya, different things. So these people like that, and I just took the opportunity to change teams and join them, and it worked out well.
So the 4-sided, I think it's the minaret, the 4-sided kind of truncated pyramid and that is what you're referring to as the minaret?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So did you find out what the function of it is? Is it ventilation for, because they use a lot of things that's like this in the Middle East for airflow through, or is it also
I
spiritual?
think each in Islam, each mosque has minarets, and it's I'd have to.
It's for the call to prayer.
Yeah,
They make the announcement. It's time.
Well, I didn't see a place at the top that they would be there with like.
It's
the
different
horn.
because this is architecture is African Saharan mosque architecture, and actually Mansa Musa hired the people that did the Andalusia in Spain to build these. So it's a different mosque architecture.
Phoebe, can you pull up a picture of the minaret, please?
So last question would be, and I ran into this in Mexico. Well, let's just talk about the minaret if there's anything
That's not it, though, is it?
Yeah,
that's
there
what I
is
was
one for the.
That's the madrasa.
That's the Sankore, but
Well,
there's
that's
a digital.
actually what I was referring to.
Okay, yeah.
Is
So
that-
I don't know if there's a speaker there, if they call to prayer, but.
But this is a university, right?
Yeah, this is it's a madrasa, it's the university, but it's also a mosque, so.
Gotcha.
And there's an interior space, and that's where.
It's behind the walls, you're right.
Okay.
We didn't go in there, we weren't allowed to go in there, but we did go to the larger UNESCO mosque.
So last question would be, and I ran into this in Mexico, when I learned that the guy across the hallway from me in the hotel, that they kind of worked out my reservation. They said, okay, well, we have a place where you won't have to move. And the guy had a full-on security detail, and I went down, and it's not cartel, right? And they go, no, it's with the military. And he was head of the Mexican Navy. And I called my wife that night, and I said, okay, there's a whole platoon of guys here in this building, and there's like 2 guys outside my door. And I said, either I'm in the worst place or I'm in the safest place. Did you ever have a feeling that you were in the worst place momentarily with all those soldiers around?
Never.
Okay.
Never.
All
It was
right.
very safe.
Good.
Very
I
nice.
find your trust of 16-year-olds with AKs to be very optimistic. But Bill,
You actually have had contact with the U.S. government. Could you tell us about the apple?
No. You don't want to have an apple and bring an apple back from Europe in your bag, because that's a customs issue. And I actually lost my global entry because I carried an apple back from the Netherlands to the U.S.
wow.
Yeah.
that was the penalty?
Yep. I lost my global entry for that. So
Not for nothing. Why did you want to bring back an apple?
it was they were great, and it was at the I was at the
Really good apples,
I was
y'all.
at the airport Hilton in Schiphol in the Netherlands, and I just threw it in my bag, forgot it was there, came across and ran into the wrong TSA agent. So that was it.
Well, fair enough.
Like, hey, I forgot.
Yeah, it was not good.
Hi. Well, I need a history refresher, if you will. Timbuktu, certainly from the films in the 30s and the 40s, was the ends of the earth. And one pictures, 2 dirt roads coming together. How did it turn into the city? What was it that made it grow? I mean, it was a trade route probably, but in the modern era, what's the attraction, how did it get so big? Or
It's not big. It's actually very, very small. It's only has a population of 30,000 people. And it's down from 100,000 in the zenith or at the top when Mansa Musa was there. So it's shrinking.
700 years ago.
The desert's reclaiming it. They still have the camel trains and the salt trains, but it's a tiny little town of very tough people that can handle 7 months of the year, 110 degrees in the southern Sahara Desert. So it's a little place with beautiful things, great madrasas, great mosques, the Al Farouk Monument. It's something to see and something worth going to.
And apart from the music festival, are there any other sort of like cultural events that bring people in from the outside?
I think they're trying to bring it back that way.
Sure.
Certainly, but I'm not aware of any other than that. There's one airport, and it's very similar to Somalia. They have 16-foot blast walls. They have many checkpoints. They have soldiers on turrets. So it's a defensible airport where they only have a few flights a week. So it's not like you can just pick up and go there. You have to have a visa. You have to know that you're going there, and you have to be on one of the 2 flights a week, and you have to have a reservation at the hotel guarded by the soldiers. So it is still dangerous. And the only way to safely do it is either charter or airplane. Over the roads, they say, is out, because you don't know who's going to be on those roads, and you're going to run into the wrong person.
It also used to be on the Niger River.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the river moved maybe 20, 30 miles to the north.
Timbuktu used to be on the river.
Yeah, so it used to be ships
There you go.
that went to Timbuktu.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
There you go.
Used to be more of a trade hub. Interesting.
Yep.
Yes.
The gold, the sheer amount of gold that I will call him a king had,
Yep.
was all of that gold in Mali, or did he raid other countries in Africa? How did he amass that much gold?
Apparently, it was done by panning for gold. So it wasn't like mining. They according to what I've read, they panned. They had tons of gold dust that they got, I guess, from the rivers. And that it's an incredible amount of gold. And all I could do is read how they said they got that, and they said they panned for gold, as opposed to mine, gold 800 years ago, 700 years ago. It's an incredible amount, and I can't explain how all of that was amassed, but it was the richest country in Africa and the richest man in the world at a point in time.
Sure.
And it'd be worth $2 trillion today if they had it. So gold is still, they're the third largest gold producer in Africa to today. So it's still a big thing for them.
Sure.
Can you speak a little bit? I know you fell like by luck into your part of the experience, but how long in advance do you need to get a visa? Do you know how long to get on that single flight? Like how far in advance do you have to book? If you want to go, can you talk through like the very boring logistical paperwork planning side of it, and how far in advance would you need to start talking to your guide? I assume if there's one flight, you have to book that in advance.
Well,
can you speak a little to the visas, flights, booking?
If you're
that
interested in going, most of my trips I book 6 months in advance. You definitely want to get the visa right away if you're going to do it. To get the visa, you need to have hotel reservation and flights, so they have to know that you've booked it and you've got air flights. So you have to have all that set up. You have to work with the guide to make sure he's booked it all for you. Like I said, there was 5 of us. Once this becomes popular again, there's going to probably be 100, or hundreds. So you definitely want to plan. Most of my trips is 6 months in advance, but I could give you the guy that could set it all up for you if you're interested.
And I'm tempted to say, if you have more sort of like specific questions for Sid about that stuff, let's wait until after the program and you can ask him sort of more one-on-one. Any other questions?
Music festival, probably not like ours. Islamic country, so I'm guessing they're not drinking. Are they smoking anything? Are they chewing khat or Beetlejuice?
Nothing. I didn't see no khat, no Beetlejuice, no alcohol. It was just, the great music and the experience. So it was a clean experience.
It's the vibe.
Yeah, it was really good, and the music was tops. So it was, I'll tell you that.
Well, if that's it from the audience, thank you so much for joining us, Sid. Thank you to everyone in our live audience. And for the folks online, if you like what you saw here tonight, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. It helps us out a ton. And if you're in LA, why not come on by? We do this every single Thursday, and you can meet our amazing speakers in person and ask your questions from our live audience. That's going to do it for us here at the Adventurers Club. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time off the beaten path. Good night.